Hey everyone, welcome to the CXO story by Link CXO, where we explore the real decisions, leadership thinking, and system behind leaders who have operated at scale. I'm Aditya, Chief of Staff at Link CXO, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Vajanti, a seasoned leader with over 2 decades of experience across firms like KPMG, PwC, EY, and leadership roles as a partner at MSKA and Associates and ASA and Associates. Vajanti, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're currently in slightly in a very different phase, taking time for family and caregiving. Before we go into your professional journey, I love to understand how this phase shaped your perspective on work and leadership.
Yeah. So it's been an amazing journey. I've been a statutory audit professional right throughout. After I qualified as a chartered accountant, joined KPMG, changed organizations, and took a leadership role at BDO, which is MSK and Associates you just mentioned. And it's been an amazing journey with a lot of learning in different perspectives of life. So it's a great journey. To start with, I would like to just mention that keeping an open mind to learn all the time is the first thing that we learn as statutory auditors. Because we walk into a client's office as an auditor, while we could be expert in accounting and auditing, but we got to recognize that the person who's sitting in front of you as a client is expert in his own field, in his own business, operations, or whatever they are doing. So we first have to learn from them. And then we apply our auditing principles and accounting principles. That's how the entire journey goes. And the entire journey that I've had, which you said that more than 2 decades as an auditor, I've just learned one thing. Before I apply my knowledge to any situation, I first have to understand and learn from the client, their industry, their perspective, what challenges they are going through. And then I take a first step. So my first, takeaway in my entire career, and I can say that it's a little bit of wisdom that, over a period of time when you get into a leadership role that you actually gain is that you got to learn from the person who's sitting in front of you. And second thing, Aditya, is very important, and not only in my industry as a audit industry, but I think it's across industries, is people come first, right? We all are dealing with people. Yeah. We talk of technology, technology enhancement, AI, and a lot of other things. But at the end of the day, person who's running the entire show is the person, human beings. So people, my team, my clients, my stakeholders, they are extremely important. And I got to focus on them and I got to give them what they need to have to be able to continue to do their work. These are the two key takeaways that I've had in my entire journey, apart from the others.
You have had a remarkable journey across big four firms and leadership roles in assurance and advisory. But instead of walking through roles, what have been the key reflection points that shaped you think as a professional?
Reflection point is that as a leader now, I must give whatever knowledge I have to the society, to the people, to the newcomers, to the new generation. That is the perspective that now I'm having as a leader. Or that's the reflection point that I am now into, where I feel that I've gathered so much of wisdom, so much of knowledge. And rather than just keeping that to myself, and see, sometimes what happens is that people are of the opinion that as the situation comes, provide the knowledge or you provide the help, you provide the support. But I think now that, irrespective of the situation, I think you should come forward and give away your knowledge to people, to the new generations, so that they shape up to take the challenging roles in the future. So that is the key reflection point that I have.
So, just following up there, was there a moment where your approach to audit or advisory fundamentally changed because of your reflection?
Yes. How did that change? I'll explain to you. A lot of times we, as a manager, as an audit manager, as an audit senior manager, or as an audit partner, typically are in a delegation role or a supervisory role. What we expect our teams to do is to execute. We tell them they are supposed to execute as per the firm's policies, right? There comes a point where, because lack of experience, lack of knowledge, young age, immaturity, they are not able to carry out their work or they're not able to, perform their work. And that's where you got to change the approach. You got to get into their shoes and support them, lead them with action rather than just telling them, sitting 1,000 feet up and telling them that you do this or you do that. You show them the path. That's how the situation changed. And how that changes as far as auditing is concerned. In audit, typically, you have roles and responsibility grid, right? When you are at a certain level, you are supposed to carry on those particular responsibilities. However, there are situations when you've got to change that role, right? And be agile and be flexible and also get into a different role while carrying on your own role. So that's how, you got to respond to situations. And this happens a lot of times because the newcomers are very inexperienced. The real life situation at a client location, they are probably at times not able to understand, grasp, and react to it. So then the leadership comes into picture and we come forward.
So you have led large client portfolios and driven significant changes in how assurance is approached. Can you help me with some two, three initiatives or contributions that you believe created the most meaningful impact?
Yes. Since I'm a statutory auditor, I would typically refrain from taking any names of the clients, but I can give you examples where large multinational private limited companies who are subsidiaries of companies who are listed outside, say in Europe or US, when they start operations over here, uh, they have all the resources in terms of finances, people. However, they lot of times need support in understanding the local processes. Yeah, the local regulations, especially regulations in accounting and regulations in auditing. Yeah, that's where, we go out of our typical auditor role and handhold them, having our independence intact, right? The decision is still with the client, but we, a lot of times get out of our role and step into kind of, a supportive role to them to guide them as to how things are done. And that's where our learning also comes from. That's where the value addition to the client also, happens, and that is what we are extremely proud of. Yeah. So couple of my clients, where one client was going in for an IPO. It's just a recent thing. They came out with an IPO in 2024. At every stage of the way, we have been with them and we have guided them through the process, like, their own sounding board. And that's where, our approach, maybe a big firm's approach, slightly differs from the traditional firm's approach, where we can change the role which fits into the legal framework again. We do not step out of our, obligations and rights. Within that circle, we give a lot of value addition to the client. So this IPO client that I had, we've actually guided them through each and every process. The IPO preparation and the actual IPO happening took around 1.5 years. And we were there every step of their way and guided them till the end, until the shares were listed and the audit was completed. That's how we help and we support the client and we provide value addition. There have been large amount of clients, large number of clients who were just subsidiaries of large multinationals, and they were struggling to, cope up with the Indian regulatory environment. How do you cope up with the Indian regulations as far as the accounting records keeping is concerned? How to get the auditing done, how to prepare information for the audit. And that's where we have again helped them out, supported them, shown them the way. The decision remains with them. What we guide them, we tell them that these are the ways to do it. Ultimately, they have to pick up a way. But that's where, I'm proud of that I've been able to make an impact. And all my clients, believe me, Aditya, they're extremely happy with me because I can change my approach within no time. I can change my approach when the client is extremely methodical, systematic, very mature client, very mature industry, and they have experts within their own accounting and their own business teams. We don't need to do much. We just do our work, which is auditing, typical auditing, and we walk away. But when there are clients who need that support, what are the deadlines, how to get there, how to prepare, what are some things to focus on, that's where we make a difference. And I personally have gone out of my way to support my clients and ensured that they met the deadlines. So that's where I'm very proud of.
Great, ma'am. Thank you for listing Some such valuable, impactful work you have done. Following up on that particular note, just to drill down on the understanding and our listeners could, have a better clarity. What do you think particularly when challenging? Was it systems, client mindset, or internal teams?
Client mindset, yes, to some extent, where the organizations are driven by Indian families. The mindset plays a large role where they are not willing to disclose information to us, which is required for our completion of our audit procedures. So that mindset has to change, and we've been trying to do a lot of kind of not counseling. Counseling is not the right word, but maybe sharing our views, sharing our experiences with the clients, and giving them the support that they need so that they are able to get out of that comfort zone, that only this much has to be disclosed to the auditors. You have the system, you have the records, you have the transactions in front of you, and now you can complete your checking, right? That's the typical mindset. But auditing goes much beyond that. We got to understand the basis of a particular transaction, why that particular transaction was entered into by the company. What's the rationale for having that transaction or continuing to have that transaction or abandoning that transaction, whatever it is. So, for us to get to that level, a lot of times the mindset is a hurdle. And that's where big four firms, multinational firms do a lot of work. They try to, give that confidence to the client that whatever confidential information you are sharing with us will remain with us. That's our first job, and that's our first liability. That's our first obligation. And it doesn't go anywhere. That just remains in the audit file. So once we give that confidence, slowly, clients and the client professionals open up with us. So that has been a challenge. Systems, yes. If it's a new company, a startup, and is struggling with financial resources, they are not able to get all those technology and systems which typically support the accounting, right? And the generation of the financial statements and the financial reports. So that is also there, but that can be overcome. You can have external consultants, you can have external packages that you can probably rent out for some time, or maybe get some jobs done from external consultants and get that done. I don't see that as a big hurdle, because eventually the company is going to go towards that. Once the financial resources are up to date, they're going to go towards that. And the third thing, people. Yes, people have been a challenge. Why? A lot of times, see, we got to understand the scenario within an organization, which is a typical manufacturing entity, a service entity, or maybe a FMCG or whatever. Each individual employee is doing his, her own job, while that person doesn't have a visibility of people's jobs in the organization, the other people's work. So while you interact with the person for a particular thing, you as an auditor need to have a 360-degree view of that transaction. But that person may not have, because that person is given only that much responsibility. So a lot of times we go back and forth, just to make them understand that why are we asking certain questions which could be beyond your job profile, right? And we got to understand that, because we need to form our opinion. We can't just say, okay, fine, you do this, and because you do this, this is fine. We got to go out and understand the rationale, background, a lot of other things are there. So, yes, people is a problem. But Aditya, let me tell you, the organizations which train their people to support the audit process to the extent possible and to the extent required, then that challenge goes away. But if the organization is not training their employees to part with the information, or to go out of their comfort zone or their own portfolio and ask certain questions which are required only for a particular purpose, then that becomes a problem. And then again, we got to step in and we got to explain to the management, and we do all the time. I mean, this is our daily job, that we explain why we need it. And we give them an assurance that everything will remain confidential within the firm, with the audit, not even with the other teams. It will just remain with the team and within the audit files. So yes, there are challenges.
How do you think about leadership, especially when you're trying to influence mindset shift within
Yes.
teams or organizations?
Yeah. So one way to do is to force people to adopt certain change, like technology. People resist. When you have new softwares, where typically in audit firms, you have documentation softwares. And day by day, as the requirements are, legal requirements are changing, regulatory environment is changing, the software packages are becoming slightly more complex, right? Even AI is introduced a lot of changes in the software packages. And the traditional way of documentation has undergone a lot of change. So you will have that resistance coming from people initially. And to some extent, because you know that you are responsible to various stakeholders, you got to have that change implemented within the organization. So, for the benefit of your clients, for the benefit of the economy, for the benefit of the larger stakeholders, you have to implement certain changes, which is say bringing in new technology. And those lot of times have to be kind of forced onto the employees or to the people. But there are certain changes which are typically behavior changes. And how those behavior changes you have to notice is that when you approach a client, the way you deal with a client who is very straightforward and cooperative with you, there is one way to deal with that client. But there are certain clients who may not be that cooperative to you, maybe a little more tougher, maybe a little more expert than you, right? More knowledgeable, more expert. Say Hindustan Unilever, right? They are the kings of FMCG. So you can't approach a client who is an employee of Hindustan Unilever in the same way you are, going and talking to somebody in a startup, right? So that mindset shift is very important, and that you bring in within your organization by doing extensive training and showing them the scenarios and showing them the failures and the successes and giving them the precedences. That's how you just put it in front of them. Let them do the reading. Let them do the, thinking through. Let them do the introspection, and they themselves will come out with agreement that yes, we got to change. So the second thing is very important, which is training the people, and the training has to start from day one. Yeah, people who are extremely young, say graduates or say newly fresh chartered accountants or MBAs, you got to start training them then. You can't say that okay, let them get settled in the organization and then we will start training. No, they have to undergo training. Say first is a culture training. What is the culture in your organization? What are the values of your organization? How do you, in all firms, right? Typical consulting, advisory, and accounting firms, client giving that respect to the client is primary. And that you have to teach. You have to teach right from day one. You can't say that, okay, fine, let them learn on the job and this and that. So training the people, making them aware of the changes, making them aware of the challenges is another approach. The third approach is on the job training. All situations, okay, you may just do a lot of simulations, you may just do imaginary situations, you may put through study materials and give them hypothetical situations and tell them to learn. They will learn to some extent. But the real learning comes when you face a situation, right? And that's the reason on the job learning, on the job training is extremely important, extremely important. And people make mistakes. I made mistakes. I still, at a leadership level, people still keep on making mistakes. But that time you handhold them, show them the way. If they are really at an error, which is say intentional error, there are some people who are just not ready to, they're too young, not ready to learn. So you have to kind of, by different ways, you have to teach them. And learning on the job is extremely powerful and extremely effective. So these three things, I can tell you that through which you can have a very good impact and have the change in the mindset that we all want to see in the employees.
You talked about mindset shifts, L&D, and also talked about leadership skills. I'd like to ask you, what do you think, what differentiates a strong leader in a professional service?
First thing is that listening skills. Yeah. My personal experience in the boardroom, in the audit committees, there are very few people, Aditya, who want to listen. There are people who want to talk, and everybody wants to talk. And I'm sure everybody has depth of knowledge in their own fields, their own experience, their own learning. But there are very rare people who want to listen. Yeah. And when you have somebody who listens to you, that makes a great impact. And my personal thought is that my leadership journey that I want to take to the next level, I want to be a better listener than a talker. Yeah. We all can talk. We all can talk, but it's very difficult to listen. So the first leadership quality is to listen. Second thing is to balance it out. Say there are alpha leaders, alpha male type leaders. There are women also who say performance and say highest performance is the benchmark. And some people who do not perform at that level need not be there, or maybe they could stay in the organization but take maybe lesser important roles or lesser riskier roles. I disagree, Aditya. You may have a person who may be a shy person, who may not be very a talkative person, expressive person, but who can have a great skill, right? You got to leaders got to now actually understand the behavior patterns, where the person's strengths lies, where the person is falling weak. Can you really help the person get over the weakness to so that that person becomes more effective to the benefit of your own organization? I think leaders have to start to do that rather than just putting very stringent performance measures. It doesn't help. It just doesn't help. People shift. What happens? You can imagine a situation where in our organization, there are only alpha males and there are no, so you've got to balance, right? Everybody is
Absolutely.
alpha. So everybody will have their own egos clashing with each other. And I will say it's my opinion or my view or my experience is more valuable than yours. It doesn't help. Yeah.
Yeah.
So different people have different capabilities, different people have different strengths. You got to harness those strengths while if you can help them overcome their weaknesses to whatever extent possible. I'm not saying that you can help the person get over the weakness 100%. Say somebody is not a public speaker. You can't make that person a trainer in a classroom training because that person can't talk in front of 50, 60, 100 people. But if you know that person can do a very good coaching on the job, one on one, why not? That person can mentor. Why not? So I think that balance has to, now come. And the leadership has to become more wiser than more assertive or more aggressive. We don't need aggression and assertion. We need more balance and we need more empathy. This is what I feel from a leader standpoint. The third thing I have observed, and I want to say not because I'm a woman, but women get very less chance to go into the ultimate CXO roles. And let me tell you, I've worked with a lot of women managers who I have groomed personally, right? I've groomed men, I've groomed women, managers, senior managers, directors. And believe me, a lot of times the women have done excellent work. The women have been very strong, executed the assignments very effectively. They understand legal requirements, technical requirements very well. They can balance the client's aggression or maybe not aggression, maybe say illiteracy. The client doesn't know many things. They can balance all that. They can take care of their teams. They can take care of their clients. They can take care of stakeholders. Such women, I think, need to be groomed to take up CXO roles. That is the leadership plunge that now has to come in the society. That is what I feel.
So, in role like yours, decision often sits at the intersection of risk, compliance, and business reality. How do you approach decision making when there is no clear right answer?
You can't have a situation where there is no clear right answer. You got to choose. If there is gray area where you don't have a visibility, the answer is very clear that you don't get into that. Yeah. Say groups, business houses, or maybe a group of companies where you know that the ultimately the management has been doing certain things which are probably on the borderline of acceptable, not acceptable, or financially transparent, not transparent, ethical, not ethical. The decision is very clear. Yeah, you
So,
could take. Go ahead.
I mean, yeah. So, have been there a situation where you had to take a call that wasn't the most
Yes.
popular but was necessary?
Yes. My firm, again, I can't say the client's name, but my firm has taken a call, very conscious call, where it was looked at by industry, the auditing industry, also industry at large, that it's a too big a risk the firm is taking. But that was an absolute calculated risk, and that happens. So there is no, you can't have a situation where there is no answer. The answer is there. Either you take a conscious call of accepting a client and going ahead with that relationship with the client, or you take a call that we don't want to go ahead with the relationship with the client. Either you, I mean, even if you have a gray area or if you have everything clear, whatever it is, your decision has to be clear. And there are clear regulatory guidelines, and you are enabled to take a decision. You are empowered to take a decision by the law.
So you invested significantly in people development, training teams, grooming managers, and building capability. What, in your experience, separates high performing teams in professional services? And what signals do you look for uh, when identifying future leaders?
Yeah. First is the agility to change your approach in any situation, not complain, because clients are different, industries are different, industry challenges are different, and every company's situation is different. Persons or people, employees or professionals who are able to mend their ways and accommodate themselves, right, to ensure the end result is first leadership skill that we pick up. The second leadership skill is that that person is willing to invest time in learning, not only learning from the client learning everybody has to do, but learning the regulatory changes, the changes that are happening on a day-to-day basis in the environment, your own accounting environment, auditing environment. There are a lot of things happening. People who want to, on their own, like to invest time in learning is another skill. Third is people who can get their work done in any kind of team, be it extremely maybe a high performance team, not so high performance team, a mix of high performers and maybe average performers. The person who can get, the work done and successfully completes the assignment is the third leadership quality that we see. And the fourth, that can be a primary. People see, auditing profession is a very tough profession. You have to do a lot of hard work, put in long hours, really long hours throughout the year. So everybody is not willing to, have that kind of life. So people who really love the auditing, that we primarily, those people are picked up as grooming for future leadership in the organization.
I mean, the role of assurance and advisory have evolved significantly from compliance to strategic business partnering. How do you see this role evolving further over the next few years?
The auditor's role has not changed by law at all. Whatever the auditor's responsibilities, rights and obligations, liabilities have been there, they are still there. How the mindset had changed is, I'll tell you. As I told you that the traditional mindset is, I walk in as a auditor. I'm given the books of accounts. I'm told to sit in a room and access to systems, and I'm told to do my job. I have moderate, less interaction with the client to the extent possible. My leadership, who are partners, directors, who get into the discussions with the client and resolve the issues, and everything is okay. Whatever the client says, and I got to accommodate the client. That has been a traditional approach to auditing. I don't blame them, because audit profession as such was evolving that time, right? And traditional Indian firms had huge competition, so they had to go that route, take that route. But the latest, or rather the last 2 decades, if you see, rather than me telling myself and the client that I am an auditor, I say that I am your partner. I'm like your sounding board. I will do my job, which is given to be my law. I will have my obligations, I will have my rights, whatever it is. But I still can listen to you. I still can understand your challenges, and I still can support you, value add you by telling you the different practices in the industry, my experience, and how you could probably approach a solution. I'm willing to do that. So my interaction as an auditor is not that, okay, you sit in a room, you are given the books, you are given the vouchers, and you carry on your work without having much interaction with the client. No, my job starts with the interaction with the client, and I'm continuously in touch with the client. So whenever there are any new things happening in the organization, client's organization, I'm also the first one to know if it concerns the books of account. That's how it goes. So that's how, and it will continue. Look, AI will probably facilitate some of the routine transaction testing, right? But the judgment, auditor's judgment, that can't be taken away. So AI can't replace that. AI or any other technology can't replace that. The judgment that I need to do as an audit partner, I need to do. And that will never go away. So it will fine tune, the auditor's role will fine tune, and the interaction could change the form, but it's still the crux or the basic of auditing, auditor and auditee relationship and the rules and responsibilities, obligation that will remain. Because if that gets loosened up, then the economy is in trouble. You see the point? My
Yeah,
independence has
yeah,
to be there. If I'm not independent, I
yeah.
can't deliver an independent opinion. So my form
Correct.
and the way I interact, all that can change, but the crux has to remain the same.
Great. I mean, as you look to step back into an active professional role, as you mentioned that independence is required. So, what would excite you the most about the next phase of your journey?
Yeah. So
What
next
kind
phase,
of
as I
goals?
yeah. So next phase I'll tell you is to groom the next generation. A lot of times, Aditya, I see that if you ask a question, they just go and Google it up. And that's not the right way to do, right? Some things that you need to learn a hard way, in the sense you got to refer to some real books, okay? Some textbooks, some maybe interpretation, some compendiums, the real life, say annual reports. You got to refer to the real knowledge. You just can't Google things up and say, okay, this is that how it is. So that has to change. Otherwise, it will all be Google generation. If there is no Google, there is no wisdom. It can't happen that way, right? So even I'm sitting on a sabbatical, I'm not away from my profession. Yeah. I'm still there because
Okay.
I'm reading, I'm doing whatever I need to do. I'm talking to people. So that has to be there. And I'm not of the opinion that everything has to be learned in a hard way. But yes, hard way is also a way, which is a very powerful and effective way. So you got to do some research on your own apart from Google. You got to talk to people. You got to read up books. You got to do what you got to be able to get that knowledge. So that little mindset shift, if I can bring about in the new generation, also give my knowledge, whatever I have learned so far, I can give it to the next generation and actually groom the next generation. That will excite me a lot.
Yes, yes, definitely. Really happy to know. I mean, the mindset, really the perspective of yes, we have been a Googling generation, if I could phrase that way.
Absolutely.
Anything and everything what we think of, we feel like Google has an answer,
Yes.
but very rightly framed.
Yeah.
So you're at leadership levels where access to the right perspective can significantly influence decision. So from your experience, how can platforms like Link CXO can add meaningful values to the CXOs today?
Yeah. Uh, First thing I can say is that if suppose I'm looking out for an opportunity and I say upload my CV on your platform, if a right match, uh, a match to my knowledge or my capability or my experience, if that can be picked up and I can get couple of leads which I can pursue, that will help me a lot. Today, I'm telling you, I hear from people who are in a job search mode. They say that unless a recruiter calls or unless a recruiter approaches, they don't understand, they don't know the opportunities, that there are opportunities in the market. This opportunity is there in the market right now. Unless they talk to people, and a lot of times, people may not, they may be busy, they may have some other compulsions, they may not be able to tell you, okay, there is an opportunity. Unless she is your friend, or you are very on a daily basis connected, or whatever it is. Everybody doesn't do so much of networking. And a lot of networking also doesn't help a lot of times. So unless I see something on LinkedIn, or unless I get a call from a recruiter, I don't know what's happening in the market. It's a reality. Yeah. I continuously got to pressurize people, talk to people. Oh, I'm open for a job, or I'm open for an opportunity. If a platform like yours can do that first level screening, that, okay, now this person's CV is in the database. Now, what are those some of the options that that person can get? and then whether to pursue that opportunity or not, that's the second step. And that then the person gets involved, and the other recruiter agencies or maybe the companies will get involved. But if I'm putting my CV onto your platform, and if I get say 5 options, at least I know that those opportunities are there. Yeah. That is something that will be very important, and that will help the people, is what I can say. Second thing, which
And
is little more probably uh, a platform cannot do, maybe a team can do, which could be a next level for you, or maybe whenever you want to reach that level, is somebody actually reads CVs of people and see a fit could be, even if the platform is not picked up a particular fit, this could be a fit. Yeah, say I am an audit professional, but I could be a fit for maybe something in private equity. See, typically it will not link, because you'll give some benchmarks, you'll give some criterias, and then the platform will pick up the related opportunities. But if somebody can do, some team can do an actual reading of some CVs and actually go and pick up, then I think there will be much more opportunities that will open up for people, and your team can help us with that.
one final question.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
if you summarize your leadership journey into one principle that has constantly and consistently guided you, what would that be?
I can say two principles. One is that I moved from performance orientation to people orientation. And I've realized after spending so many years in various organizations, people come first. Yeah. Your employees, your team, your client's team, people come first. People are the ones who actually ultimately perform. So people come first, and people can change. People can be groomed. People can be supported, and a lot of things. That is one. And second thing, learning doesn't cease to exist. You've got to learn at all times. You just can't say, I can't say I'm audit partner and I'm not concerned with AI as such. No, I got to learn, right? I got to learn how AI is going to make impact to my own profession, how AI is going to make impact to my clients' professions, how it is going to make impact on an overall basis, where are the risks, where are the rewards. So I got to learn. So two things, people and learning and giving away, obviously. If you don't give, believe me, I could retire at the highest designation, Aditya. But if people don't remember me, it's all futile, right? And even if I don't hold a designation, but people remember me for whatever I've done for them and whatever I've given them as a coaching, as a feedback, as a support, whatever, I think that's the biggest takeaway for a leader. People have to remember you.
Absolutely. This has been a very deeply insightful conversation.
Thank you so much.
Especially your perspective on leadership, quality, and evolving the role of assurance beyond compliance. Thank you for sharing your journey so openly.
Anytime.
And to everyone listening, tuning into CXO Story by Link CXO, we'll continue bringing you conversation with leaders who think deeply and build meaningfully. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.